Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story. My name's Lacey Spence, and I'm the producer for this show.
And I'm Wanda K. Robinson. I'm the project manager for this great story. And we are coming live to you tonight right here in the WEIU TV studio and live on WEIU.net. We're streaming on WEIU Facebook and YouTube pages as well.
And we're glad that you found us here, wherever you're at. This evening, we're joined by several of our wonderful storytellers, one of our champions, and we've got 15 great stories on tap for you this evening. And as you're watching, be looking underneath the story's title. You'll see a little A, O, or K and a wreath. That will be which town the story is from.
And so what we need you to do right now is jot this number down, or if you've got a cell phone, punch this number right in your cell phone and get ready to call us, because we want you to call and talk to the storytellers and get your DVD and Blu-ray tonight.
All right.
Right now?
Yeah, without any further ado.
We're going to watch Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story.
Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas, This Is Our Story is brought to you in part by the Oakland Clinic is one of Horizon Health's 2 satellite rural health clinics providing care for all patients. Oakland Clinic Horizon Health hopes you enjoy Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas, This Is Our Story. Oakland Clinic Horizon Health is proud to be a part of the show and the Oakland area. With locations in Ashmore, Kansas, and Brockton, Prospect Bank supports all of the stories and storytellers in Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story. Prospect Bank is committed to service to all of the communities in our area. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Richie's Furniture is a family-owned and operated furniture store located in Ashmore and is a proud supporter of the production of Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story on WEIU. Richie's Furniture thanks those associated with the show and hopes everyone enjoys the stories. The city and residents of Oakland, Illinois support all of the storytellers and stories in Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story. The city of Oakland is honored to be a part of this historical program. Serving the Oakland area business community over 50 years, hosting events throughout the year, promoting business and tourism. The Oakland Area Chamber of Commerce supports Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story on WEIU. The mission of the Oakland Hinesboro Charitable Foundation is to enhance the communities of Oakland and Hinesboro. By supporting this show on WEIU, we hope it shows our commitment to Oakland and Hinesboro. A small town with good hearts describes the village of Ashmore. The village of Ashmore and their board is excited to be a part of Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story on WEIU. Enjoy the show from your friends in the village of Ashmore. The Ashmore Community Club thanks all of the storytellers and folks behind the scenes of Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story on WEIU. The Ashmore Community Club proudly supports all efforts in Ashmore. Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas, This Is Our Story is partially supported by a grant from the Illinois Arts Council, a state agency.
My story starts, it was like 1823 when my ancestors, the Boyers, came up from Kentucky and settled just south of Kansas in the Pleasant Hill area. And They said it was like a wilderness. There was nothing but wolves and rattlesnakes. It was unexplored, basically. But then it wasn't really till 1850 till Frederick Boyer and his family moved up to what is now Kansas, and they called that the Prairie. And it was just about that time that the Alton-Terre Haute Railroad came in. And that's what really connected this area to the outside world, because it brought in people and made an outlet for hay and grain and livestock. And so more people moved in. And so a man by the name of Lovell Wilhoit, that's kind of important, he platted and surveyed out the town of Kansas with the assistance of my great-great-grandfather, Elijah Boyer. It was pretty well wide open then, and land was kind of up for grabs. And the railroad brought in a lot of people and a lot of businesses, and pretty soon Kansas was booming. But it wasn't Kansas then. It was because of its location between Paris and Charleston and Indianapolis and St. Louis. They called it Midway, because there was Midway in between these towns. It wasn't until 1858, when they applied for a post office, that the state said, hey, there's already a Midway up by Peoria. You're gonna have to change your name. Well, you remember 1858, this was right before the Civil War, and there's a guy, I'm sure you're familiar with, Stephen A. Douglas, had introduced a bill called the Kansas-Nebraska Bill, which I won't go into, but it dealt with slavery in new regions. So it was very controversial, very much talked about, so they named the town Kansas. And then it got incorporated, and that's how Kansas went from Midway to Kansas. Shortly after that, another railroad came in called the Old Doty Railroad, and it went from Danville down to Siegel. So now we're kind of at a crossroads with two railroads. Well, business is really booming now. And there's hotels, dry goods stores, 16 dry goods stores, grocery stores. And it's funny, you walk through Kansas now, I look at my old postcards and see Main Street the way it was. And it's just like buildings on both sides and people. And they say, like on Saturday night, you couldn't find a place to park. I mean, that's where people came on Saturday, you came to town. Well, I go downtown now and it just looks totally different. But we still have a lot going for us. We've got 3 churches and several organizations and a wonderful school system. I mean, without these picture postcards that we have to validate what this really looked like, you just can't appreciate what the town looked like back then. The old days, I sure like looking back at those old pictures and seeing what. I wish I could go back in time for one day and just walk down Main Street and like, wow.
Don Ritchie is my father-in-law, and Donnie was born in Ashmore in 1933. He went into the Army and came home in 1955, and shortly thereafter he started a construction business. Donnie was a visionary. He had a knack for knowing what Ashmore needed, and he had the drive and the determination to make that vision come to life. The school was small at that time, and one of his concerns was that there would not be enough children to keep the school in Ashmore. Well, he knew to keep the school in Ashmore that the population would have to increase. Donnie started the subdivision, Ritchie subdivision, built several houses just out of barren property that was completely empty, put 4 roads in, and built many houses, apartments. He built other houses around town and apartments. So the population was 450, I believe, in 1970, and by 1980 it had increased to 782. So that dream, Donnie's dream for Ashmore to grow, came to fruit with the building of the subdivision. He also built a car wash, an auction house, a furniture store, a hardware store, a gas station, and a deli. The auction house he built from Quonset huts. They were used to store grain in. It was amazing that people would come to that auction every Thursday night. Couldn't wait, and people will still come in the furniture store to this day and say, I remember when this was an auction house. Eventually, he connected 3 Quonset huts with the building between those, and my husband Rod started selling furniture in the back of the auction house on the Thursday evenings, which didn't take long then, and it became Richie's Furniture. Donnie just had a love for Ashmore. He had a love for the community. He was very active in the church. He was very active in the community club. Anytime there was a function going on, Donnie was going to be there. Whatever needed to be done, he would make sure that it got done. He was a wonderful family man. Family meant everything to him. His grandchildren were the light of his life. Him and Mamie would take them on vacations every year. The kids could not wait to go, pull them in wagons, put them in the back of the truck. The 4 grandchildren learned their work ethic from Donnie. He put them in the back of that truck and take them to work, whether it was shoveling dirt, picking up antiques, whatever. They went along and they worked. And they loved it. They loved every bit of it. He just was a people person. Everywhere he went, people would, Donnie, Donnie, Donnie. He loved people. There was no one that he wouldn't stop and take the time for. Donnie passed away at the age of 66 in 1999. But his dream for Ashmore, Donnie's dream, is still seen to this day.
Located on the north edge of Oakland, there is, nestled back in the trees, is a log cabin village. And the owners of that village are Robert E. Lee and his wife Melba and the family. And back in the 1980s, Robert worked for Young Radiator Company in Mattoon, Illinois. And they transferred to Tennessee, Lexington, Tennessee. And he was a minister at the time. And so he would go to Tennessee during the week, and on the weekend he would come back and hold services at the church, at the Baptist church. And so during the week he would drive around in the evenings, and he ran across some empty log cabins and thought, if I could have one of those, if I could purchase that, I could bring it back and put it on my property in Illinois. So he ended up having 3 different cabins that were homes that he purchased and brought back to Illinois. So my husband and my brother and a couple of friends went down to dismantle these cabins. And it's interesting because with a log cabin, you have to put it back the same way you took it apart, otherwise it will not stand. So they would take tin and nail them on the edges of these cabins, Northeast 1, Northeast 2, so that they could put these back together the same way. So if you were to come to the village today, there is a cabin that we call the Larson cabin that has these tin pieces at the edge of those so that you can see them. The 3 that they have from Tennessee are the Larson cabin, the Mattie Welch cabin, and the Bartholomew cabin, and there is family history with each one of those. With the Mattie Welch cabin, there were 2 old dresses hanging on the wall, and so when my brother went down to dismantle that and bring it back, he said, Mattie, what do I do with these dresses? And they had been her sisters, and one of her sisters had passed away, and the mother put those 2 dresses on the wall. And so Mattie said, it's part of the home, so it goes with the home. So my dad made a shadow box and put both of those dresses in there. So today those 2 dresses still hang in the Mattie Welch cabin. And then the Bartholomew cabin had Bartholomews living in it for 150 consecutive years. It was built in 1828. There were 3 more homes that they brought in to the village. One they actually built on site there. So we have a Hall cabin, a Murray cabin, a Barksdale cabin, and a Charleston cabin. And they decided they could have an entire village. So if you were to come to the village today, you could also see a general store, a blacksmith shop, a carriage house, a school/church. And we've had lots of events there throughout the years. So what started as a project with my dad and my brother has ended up all these years later, 30-some years later, as something that we still want to maintain. My dad taught my brother a lot of things in the village about building with wood and having a vision and sharing that with other people, in his case with his son. And so my brother started to do that with his sons. And last year he was in an accident and he passed away. And so a lot of people came to me and said, what are you going to do? What is going to happen with the village? Because he was such a big part of the heart of the village. And so we determined that he would definitely want us to continue that vision that they had. So we have decided that we are going to continue to move forward. We'd just like to have a place where old ways can be shared with old friends, or perhaps some new ways can be shared with new friends. And so we would love to be able to share our Independence Pioneer Village with others.
I guess I'll start with Grandma and Grandpa Coffey, because they were great, great people. And they owned a farm south of Ashmore, and I admired my grandpa, but he passed away when I was 3. My dad started farming south of town in like 1947, and his brother, which is a few years older than him, was farming on his own. So after maybe 2 years, they decided, both the brothers, to put the farm together, and that started Coffey Brothers. And so they had 3 other brothers that helped them on the farm, but they were a little bit younger. And just to see those guys, the way they started, it was tough back then. The way they started, and they just kept expanding. In 1960, Coffey Brothers decided to come to town, and they bought a building in Ashmore for $500. And that's when they started the feed dealership. So I guess you could say it kind of made a big circle. Started out farming, the 2 businesses, and now we're back to just all farming. And then when we sold the store in '99, that's when it became Coffey Family Farms. And that's kind of when I took over the farm and done all the farming and stuff. So right now it's a 4-generation farm. Like my grandsons are out there, and they probably done, I'd say, 85% of the harvest last year. They just eat it up. They love farming. The family to me is number 1. You know, that's very, very important. We would always stop at night. When it came supper time, my wife would bring supper and stuff, and we would always stop and take time for family, no matter what. You know, I remember stopping one time, my son was small, and we would sit there and throw the football back and forth, you know, because I just wanted him to have fun, you know, and I wasn't there all day and half the night, and, you know, I just wanted to take time with the family. When I started buying ground, I'd done it for my son, and now he's taking it over and he's buying some ground, and we're always looking ahead for the next generation to make sure they've got enough to farm, and God willing, it should be around for a good while.
The village of Kansas, originally Midway, was founded around 1853, I think. And back in those days, there was one church building that was shared among 3 congregations. That didn't work out very well. And shortly after that, a group of people got together that wanted to start a Christian church in the community. And by 1858, that had organized as Kansas Christian Church. So an original church was built, a wooden structure. Later it got moved to another location, but somewhere around 1906, the congregation got the idea they ought to have a more modern brick building, and so plans began to build a new building. That was completed in October of 1909. I remember in 2010, I had a funeral for a lady named Elizabeth Sexton, lifelong resident of Kansas and a member of our church. And it occurred to me, Elizabeth was 105 when she died in 2010. She was the last person who had living memory of what the landscape of Kansas looked like without that church building. And for some reason, when I went to bed on July 21st, 2011, that was the last thought I had before I went to bed. About 3 a.m. the next morning, July 22nd, I was awakened by someone beating on my door, ringing my doorbell, and yelling, "Your church is on fire, your church is on fire." I hurried up and I got dressed, and as I stepped out into the dark, I could hear the fire whistle going already, and I could see a little bit of red, and I thought to myself, it's not that big of a fire, we'll get it put out, we'll take a week or two off, we'll throw some paint and maybe some spackle on it, and everything will be fine. And then the ceiling caved in, and the fire spread, and within hours, our building that we had loved for just over 100 years, 102 years, our building was gone. By the time the sun came up that morning, all that was left were a couple of walls and our bell tower, the bell still up at the top. And it was a few months of clearing the rubble and getting rid of brick and trying to make sense of everything. And then finally in August, we were ready to take the bell tower down, but we knew we needed to get the cornerstone out first. A couple of our guys are in construction, a couple of the guys in the church, and they started chiseling out the cornerstone very, very carefully, little by little. They got it more and more free. So then finally Jeremiah reached up underneath, found a cavity in the rock, and he pulled out this little box that had been lead soldered shut. What we found was a copy of the Kansas Journal from that week, which included a story about how the Presbyterian Church was about to build a new building, and they were going to use the same contractors that were building the Christian church. We found other newspaper clippings. We found lists of members and lists of members of committees for the church. We found lists of people who worked for the bank and ran the bank. We found postcards and all kinds of pictures. And out of all the treasure, we found 1 penny that someone had thrown into the box at the last minute. So, in the Bible, Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I think it occurred to all of us that this little community that they had founded just a few decades before building this church, this community was their heart. And they shared their treasure with us. They shared their heart with us. Well, by 2013, we finished building the new building, which we love. And when we finally got the cornerstone back in place, and we put the same cornerstone there along with some of the original brickwork, we put our own time capsule in there. And when we put our time capsule in, we put some pictures and we put some newspapers. My old preaching Bible is in there. And we also included letters from our members, sealed letters. I have no idea what they've written, but I asked them, write your stories. Tell your stories to the people who will open this eventually. Tell them about your struggles and your joys. Tell them about your blessings. Tell them what it was like to live when you did, with the problems and the joys that you had. Share your treasure with them, just like the generations before had shared their treasure with us.
Oh my goodness, I know that you are loving these stories. Didn't I tell you? They're just amazing. They just warm your heart and draw you in. So what we need you to do right now is pick up the phone and call. These storytellers and our champion are waiting to hear from you, and they want to talk to you and tell you more about their story. So please pick up the phone and call right now. You can get DVDs. Tonight we're offering Blu-rays. Like,
Ooh,
what?
20th century, we've arrived.
I know, we're so uptown now. So Blu-rays and DVDs, one is $75, 2 or more are $60 each. So what a bargain you're getting if you buy more than one. And you know what? Mother's Day and Father's Day are coming up really, really soon, just right around the corner. So wouldn't it be great? Your mom and your dad would just feel so loved if you gave them a DVD or a Blu-ray of Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas, or as we like to call it, A-OK.
Well, the other thing that's cool about that too, you talk about giving it as a gift. I know that I grew up in Oakland. I graduated. I didn't get too far. I'm here in Charleston, loving that too. But it's a great gift for your graduates. If you're going to be sending them off to college, or even your folks who are watching from out of town and you just want that taste of home that you can watch anytime, this is a great way to get that.
It really is, and what great stories. You know, these are small towns, but with people with big hearts, and they just have rallied in, and they were so excited to come together and tell their story. And I know that you are just being blessed tonight as you're watching these great stories unfold, and you're getting to hear them for the first time. And so what would make these storytellers just get real excited tonight is if you would pick up the phone and call them and start ordering DVDs and Blu-rays.
We want them busy, that's for sure. So while we have a minute, I'd like to chat with one of our storytellers. We have Brett Hammond from the Kansas Christian Church on site, and he was our story, Where Your Treasure Is. Now, where did you come up with the title for your story?
It's in the Bible, Lacey.
Well, I know that was in your story, but hey, first phone call, love that.
Good job.
But what made you what is this is a treasure for you to really find that? Were you expecting anything to come out of that cornerstone?
We had no idea what would be in the box, and I think what surprised us all was it wasn't anything grand. It was simply their stories and who they were. And as I said in the interview, in the story, we realized that was their treasure, who they were, and the town that they were so proud of. And so we kind of reflected that when we put our own box in. We told our stories. So
definitely, and we know that you are pastoring.
Yes.
So how has this experience been different from the pulpit that you're normally on a weekly basis?
Well, this, as far as telling the story, you guys made me a little more nervous than I am usually, having a camera pointed at me. But no, it was just great to get to tell the story of our church. We're very, very proud and very humbled of what we get to do in our community.
Sure thing, and we're so thankful that you're here with us tonight. Now, while we've got some other folks on the phone, we are hoping that you will call and get Mr. Brett busy. Hey, called it. Look at that. That's where our treasure's at.
That's right.
And I think that's probably the best part. He says that he was a little nervous, but that's kind of the fun part for us. We have a lot of folks who will come in. They will be so terribly nervous to tell their story. And my goodness, they come in, they rock it out, just a little polishing on my end, and it really makes for such a great show. It's such an honor to get to tell these stories to you guys tonight.
It really is, and I hope that it will cause you to maybe come to Ashmore, Oakland, and Kansas and visit these beautiful small towns that have so much to offer. I mean, what about those stories that you just listened to? John Saxton from Midway to Kansas. Who knew that it was called Midway?
Right.
Like, I always thought it was called Kansas Forever, and it really wasn't. And how cool was that? And I think some people that even heard the story last week when we showed it to the storytellers, they were saying, I learned so much tonight, and I've lived here all my life. So that was so cool. And Cindy talking about her father-in-law. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it makes you wish that you could have met him. Like the impact he had on Kansas, just being such a great gentleman in the community, someone who will always stop to talk with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of person you want in your corner.
Right. And to build Ashmore up, I mean, to love that community so much. And like she said, it jumped like 300 and some people because he was working to build the town. So tonight, you can help build these towns up just a little bit higher if you want to. Pick up the phone and call. Keep these phones burning up. Oh, yeah, that's what we want to hear. Pick up the phone and call us tonight. If you can't get through on the first call, then punch that redial and call again until you get through to one of our storytellers.
And we just love, again, being able to share these stories with you. I know that it's been kind of a big reunion for me when we did the first community meeting, and it was like folks that I had cheered for in high school. I had folks I went to church with, and it's a really great way to connect people. And I know our other producer here, Ramin, he's always big on it's educational. It is so cool to be able to learn new things and learn new things for these folks who are from the towns. So I'm from Oakland, and I'm learning that there was this gym with the Rutherford home that I didn't make it to while I was there. And so now I got to circle back around for sure. This story really sold it for me.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And Tracy Montgomery talking about Independence Pioneer Village. I mean, you can just feel the heart of, and I know that Lacey and I went there the other day and walked the grounds, and my goodness, such a feeling, such a warm feeling. So if you haven't ever been there, go and be sure and visit that sweet Independence Pioneer Village, and you'll feel the same way that we do. We want to go back when we got more time.
Actually, I will be back for a wedding here pretty soon, and I'm excited to check it out. And like you said, this DVD, getting a DVD, a Blu-ray, being able to share these different stories, these locations, these landmarks, can help draw people into the town. So get that number on the bottom of your screen plugged into your phone. You can get one DVD or Blu-ray for $75, 2 or more for $60. And this is going towards WEIU. So it's what we get to do here. It gets us propelled onto our next story in the lineup. We got T-Topless. If I said it wrong, please don't.
T-Town.
Don't call in to yell at me. There it is. But we've got T-Town next, and we also get to give a great educational opportunity for our students, whether it's through our news program, our radio program, and it's such a blessing to be able to do what we get to do, but it's only from your support.
It really is. And when you want me and Lacey to get excited, talk about WEIU and what we love to do for our communities. And this is a prime example. We can go into small communities just like these, just normal, common, everyday people just like you, and they sit down with us and tell their stories. I always tell them, when you come in and sit down to tell us your story, why, you're just talking to a couple of old friends of yours. and so they come in and they sit down and tell their story, and then Lacey does her beautiful gift of editing, and she just makes it so polished and lovely, and well, they're stars. Oh, I think even we got an Oscar back here at our red carpet premiere last week. We gave out Oscars to our storytellers, and man, they loved it, and that's got them all excited here tonight.
And how about this set? I mean, we were able to get, we've been lovingly calling it the AOK flea market, but these are such treasures.
High class.
Oh my gosh, it's been so cool to be able to go around and collect these different items, especially me coming from Oakland, slightly biased, but I love all the old sports memorabilia. Like the pom-poms over there give me the biggest like throwback ever. And we've got jerseys.
We've got the Ashmore fire truck. Look at this fire truck in
I might need to give you a little
Look
cute
at
little
that.
Vanna White.
Oh my, and it jingled the bell.
I didn't practice that, sorry. Maybe by the next segment.
There you go. But this set is awesome. We were just blown away again. These precious people, when we said we needed items for the set tonight to just wow you with, they just kept giving and giving and giving. And oh, and look back here at Miss Ollie the otter. Well, I don't think we've ever had an otter on set before, but we've got Miss Ollie with us tonight, and how cool is that?
Thank you so much for calling
in.
in. We love it. If you're just joining us, we've gotten through 5 stories so far from Ashmore, Oakland, and Kansas, and we've got some really great ones still to come.
Yes, we
And we're
do.
so thankful that you're calling in again. It's that number at the bottom of the screen. You can also give safe and secure at WEIU.net. So obviously, if you're watching now, you found us somewhere, but if you've got a loved one who's out of town, who's like, where can I watch this? You can find it on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel. We are out there over any of the airwaves you could kind of think of, wanting to share this story with you.
We are, and you know, I know DVD $75, but you know what? You're getting much more than a DVD or Blu-ray. You are able to be a part of WEIU, reaching into communities, making a difference. You know, that's the thing that sets our PBS station apart from others, is because we go into our towns, our communities, and we highlight what's so special about all of them. And so we're sharing that with you tonight. So thank you all for calling. My goodness, these phones are busy, and we love that, so keep it coming. Please call a neighbor. If you know somebody that's not watching, call them real quick, tell them to pick up and get on the phone and call in and get a DVD or Blu-ray. Well, right now, we're getting ready to go to Ashmore, Oakland, Kansas. This is our story.